Right, so today we're going to be having a look at how to make a fire. So there are three main elements to it: your fuel, your ignition source, and air. So what I'm going to go through first is the fuel, how you get it, how you prepare it, and maybe some different methods, because obviously there's more than one method. So today I am in a woods with silver birch and sweet chestnut, elm, that sort of thing, holly. Usually if I was in the woods I would get pine sap and use that as a fire lighter because it's extremely flammable. However, I don't have any pine trees here, or none with any sap on them, so we're going for the method of making a bundle out of silver birch, fibres basically from the bark, and you peel them off, and I've got a short clip that I'll show right now. And these are extremely lightweight, extremely thin, and so they have a lot of potential to combust. They also can carry some flammable sap in them, or resin, but it depends how old the tree is that you got it off or whatever. And just to show you, you need a decent bundle. I don't have the smallest hands, but I mean that's not going to tell you how big this is, but you need a decent bundle of it. Right, then set that aside for a minute, because we then need to focus on, so you got your small tinder bundle, now you need your small kindling essentially. So I found this, tons of this small stuff, and it snaps. It's really dead, but it's not wet, it's dry, and this thin stuff will be very easy fire lighting material for the first few stages. So what you will need to do is you'll need to get quite a bit of this and make a bundle of this. So I'll be back once I've done that. Right, so the next stage is, so once you've got a decent bundle of quite thin stuff, like really thin stuff, as thin as you can get it, I've already started this, but what you essentially need to do is then, from taking off those small bits, you'll then have larger bits that stem from the branch itself. So for instance, this is what an unprocessed bit would look like. This is just thin enough for your thinnest stuff, really, maybe not even thinner stuff. That'll go in your next pile. So you'd have your really thin stuff, you'd then have this, which is the next one up, which I've started making a pile of right here. As you can see, they're a little bit bigger, not much, but just enough to make a difference and needing its own category. So that goes in that pile as well, and then you're left with the actual thicker bits, about finger width or thereabouts, and you want to make a pile of those as well. So in the end, what you'll have is essentially, the way I like to do it is 4 piles, or 5 if you include your tinder. So you have your tinder bundle, then have your really small stuff, your medium small stuff, finger width, and then anything above, basically, because once you've got to the point where it's finger width to thumb width, after that you can put on larger logs and larger pieces of wood. So I'll finish off doing this, and then I'll show what I've done at the end of that. So as you can see, I've got my tinder bundle, I've then got my small stuff, medium small, finger width to thumb width, and then anything bigger. So that gets quite a bit thicker than your thumb, and that will go up to wrist thickness or however big you need it for your fire. But that is about what it looks. Tinder bundle, thin, a little bit thicker, finger to thumb, thumb and above. And so now we'll go on to preparing the fire ground. Okay, so the next stage is preparing where you're actually going to have your fire. So in a minute I'll need to move these a bit out of the way maybe, but what you want is you want to clear your area. So unlike over here, there's a lot of wood and debris. I've cleared it, and there's clay underneath, which is quite helpful because that's a good insulator once you've heated it up, which will create a nice base for the fire. What I like to do, so I've taken some of the bigger things like this piece here and I've split them, and what this creates is, they don't have to be amazing, but just shards where you've got the inside facing outwards, and I've got a few of those. And I've also chopped or sawn lengths of silver birch, which is the same as this, and I'll split them down in a minute, because we're going to do 2 things with those. Some are going to go for this, and essentially what this is it's to create a barrier from the ground, sucking all that heat away from the center of the fire. So I would then put my bundle on there and start the fire on here, so that all the moisture isn't getting to the actual fire and it has a good chance of starting. So I will process these quickly, put a couple more there, and I'll be back with you then. Okay, so I have now processed a bit more, so there's a good base there now. You don't need too much, just enough so that nothing's going to spill off or anything like that. A good like hand width is good enough. Then what I've done is these ones, I've processed them all, but instead of just chopping them in half, I've chopped them in half and then half again. So what this then creates is thin bits like this, and this is what's going to create our fire sticks, and that is an essential part of how we're going to get this fire going, because with only this bundle, that will burn very hot but not for very long, and so what you need is something similar, so shavings sort of thing, but a bit thicker, something that's going to last a bit longer, so that you can catch these, because that is unlikely, unless you have a lot of it, is unlikely to catch any of that. So I'll now process them into fire sticks. I'll make another video on how to actually do that, purely because it takes too long on this video, but I will make another one for sure. And once we have that going, we can see about starting it up. So, just in case, one, you don't know how to make a fire stick, and two, you're actually trying to follow this process whilst doing it, which would be a good way of learning it. Essentially, I won't explain in depth. I mean, there's nothing much to it, but it does deserve one of its own videos. But essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to lean the edge of the knife edge just so that it catches, and just push it down, and you'll get something like that, but they should stay on the end like that. So if I try and, obviously you usually pin it to the ground somehow, so that it doesn't move, but there I just created one which stayed on just. And yeah, there's different methods of doing it. So some, you can make them curl more and be thinner, or you can make them flatter and longer, or however you need to do it essentially, or want to do it. But essentially what you're trying to do is just create curls to place on top of that tinder. So pieces of wood like this, if the curl comes off the end, this sort of wood you can keep and use for kindling by just simply splitting that down again. And let me see if I can do this. And you can use another piece of wood just as a batten. Okay, so this wood's a bit rotten, so it's not ideal, but with a better piece of wood you could split this down the center, and you could then have two very dry pieces of wood which are quite thin, which could go in your finger to thumb pile. That's a bit better, a bit like that. And that is very dry. The reason I use my lips is because they have a lot of touch sensors, sensing cells, so you can feel when things are wet, cold, warm, a lot easier on your lips than your hands or anywhere around your body. Right, so I'll finish processing all these cows and I'll get back to you. So I now have a nice big pile of cows. As you can see, some are long and wide, some are really thin and curly, and it's good to have a good mixture of that, because obviously the small stuff will catch first and then it will burn into the bigger stuff. But, or should I say and, so let's make this fire then. So the first step is getting this tinder from the silver birch, and what we want to do is I need to position this camera. Right, if I place that there for a minute, you want to place it on top of there. Then essentially what you want to do with it is you want to grab it in your hands and just rough it about a bit. So what this has now produced is very fine dust, and this will help to make this actually combust. So what we now want to do is I'm going to try and land a spark on that, and then it's basically, as soon as I've done that, I'll grab that, and we can then put that straight on. So is that a good camera position? I think that's about as good as it's getting. Right. So this is my flint and steel. I have blue tape on the end because the wooden stopper fell off. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife, I'm going to take my flint, and I'm going to try and drop a spark onto there. So now I'm going to try and start one of these with that flame. So I don't know whether I'm going to edit that sympathetically, in the sense that I could skip it on to once I've actually got that fire going. But in a sense, I'd like to show how easy it actually is, not just how easy it is with editing, because that took a couple minutes. I mean, and that's not a long time, but it is not just one strike and you're done. But anyway, now that we've got this going, what I'm going to do is just keep on piling those cows that I made earlier onto it and let them take hold of the fire. And then as soon as that has taken hold, what we want to do is we want to reposition all of them if they're falling off, and then lay down our small tinder. That burst up in flames when I put that there, so I jumped a little bit. But even if they're not in the ideal position, which they're not because I just dropped them there, these should now get going. And as soon as these get going, and remember, don't rush anything. It will probably, and I say probably because you never know, but it will most likely stay alight for a little while longer than you think. But get your medium stuff ready. And what you will want to do is place the medium stuff on once that has got going. You might have to give it a bit of a blow. And that is now getting going. Usually chucking them on like that is going to be alright. It looks a bit sporadic and just nonchalant, or whatever you want to call it, but at the end of the day, if the fire's going, it's going to catch that wood. Later on, once you've actually got that fire going, you would want to stack the pieces of wood in a shape so that they meet at a point where the center of the fire is, and that's so that they take up the most amount of heat possible. God, that does smell good. Right, and then from there, it's basically just a case of carry on adding the bigger pieces of wood. Nothing much to it, and just sit and enjoy it, and be grateful that you've got a fire going, because it can be very challenging sometimes. So thank you for watching, and I hope I've either helped some of you out, or just given you a bit of inspiration to go and see if you can do it yourselves. And a lot of people think that this is hard, and in many ways it is. It's not something we're all taught anymore, but this is one of the most primal skills you could have. And yeah, after a few goes, you'll get good at it, and hopefully you'll be able to light your own fires. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good rest of the day or night, whichever it is. Alright.